Welcome to Drinks with Defenders. I'm Addie B. Plate.
And I'm Kayla Murphy. We're two law school friends turned criminal defense attorneys turned podcast hosts.
We're here in this space because we now work in separate offices and miss collaborating with each other.
We've been talking about creating a podcast for years where we talk about the complexities of the criminal justice system, the aspects of it that we grapple with, and the importance of what we do.
At the end of a long work week, we want to sit down, have a drink with each other, and talk about the rabbit holes of criminal defense, just like we always have. So let's get into it. Cheers!
What's up, gang? Gang, gang,
No.
gang. Oh.
Keep that in. Gang. Dude, let's talk about the week. We have to.
What are you talking about? I don't know. Did anything happen?
Clark, excuse your sunny sarcasm. Well, we have to talk about the election.
Let's paint a picture. Let's paint a picture. Like, tell me about your night, like on election night. Like, where were you?
That's a great question.
What did that look like?
So I went and voted the weekend before the election because Washington opens up the polls on weekends the last week or so before election day, which most states should do. They should open the voting centers on the weekends. Increasing voter access is critical. But so I went and voted on Saturday, and then I think it was last Saturday. And then election day or the night before election day, I went to a hockey game because I was like, I can't just sit in front of my TV and watch the electoral college votes come in or else I'm going to go insane. So I went to a hockey game. I admittedly only made it through 2 periods because I was having such a bad anxiety. 2 periods of the hockey game because I was having such a bad anxiety attack. And then I went home and I went straight to bed. So I found out the election results. I knew what they were going to be looking like, but I woke up and then went to work. And I originally was planning on going and sitting in court and just doing some work from the back of a courtroom to get inspired again, because it did not feel good election day morning. But then I just ended up having a day where I just was in my office writing motions and briefs all day. So that has been the tone of my week. It's been very put my nose down, grind it out, and just get back to work. Especially I live in a blue state. I work in a red state. It was business as usual for me. It was, all right, time to use this law degree. Let's get it. That was my week. Then the weekend came and I was admittedly not very happy again. And I put up my Christmas tree. So that's been what the election has felt like for me. What about you?
Your mental fortitude is admirable. I had been sick this past week. And so I was just doing the bare minimum and in bed. And so, on election night, I was just doing the death spiral, just kept refreshing, as the states came in and just pathways to victory with XYZ, and just doing that for hours, until, the grim realization. So that was hard. So I've just been sick. It's been rough. But on the bright side, there's this FX series based in the Purge universe. So it's not like the Purge movie, right? But it's like a series. And there's two seasons. 10 out of 10. So that's how I was coping.
That sounds like you, that's how you're coping.
Yeah. I like the aesthetics.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I think it's important to say here, because I've said it to you, privately. that for me, there's so many things I could say about the election, but something that I think remains to be the tone of this podcast, and who we are as people. And this is not to be clickbaited or taken out of context or anything like that, but and there's a lot of other things that I could say, but the thing that I wanted to share is that it is so heartbreaking for me as a defense attorney that people were choosing to focus, and I think it was an incorrect focus, although I totally understand why, on Trump being a convicted felon. And we can hash that out. I've commented on it. I think that, just because somebody has felony charges, that shouldn't preclude them from political ambition. They should certainly be able to vote. But it's hard for me as a defense attorney that the first felon that holds office in that way is him compared to other people that we work with every single day. And by comparison, the first female president that we could have, I really want to have some of the qualities that Kamala Harris does. And that's kind of the heartbreaking thing for me. I mean, there's a lot to flesh out about it and just a lot of feelings that I'm sitting with, but it's like, man, there's so many great people that are within the criminal legal system that have criminal history that will never aspire to those roles, and that will never be on the table for them. And that's heartbreaking. And then the opportunity to have like a strong, Black, highly educated woman lead our country. And not a perfect candidate by any means, but I think it's just like, when are we going to ever just say that like a woman's qualifications, if she's overly qualified, are enough? And for me, that's something that I'm just kind of sifting through as well. So rough week, which leads us to the present moment, kind of going off of that. We have a really special guest for the podcast today. Kayla and I think something that remains to be true for me is that it's really surprising who resonates with us in this space, because this was always something we just kind of wanted to do for fun. And then we've gotten to meet really incredible people through our podcast. And I think people who really wouldn't listen to what either one of us have to say are now listeners of ours. And I never really thought that somebody who has the firsthand lived experience of the criminal legal system would reach out to us. And that's what happened here. And I think it's really important to just kind of say at the outset that we do not have anything to do with this person's case. We were reached out to by Jamal Moore. His wife is going to be joining us on the podcast today. And we are planning on doing a more in-depth analysis of his case, talking about different components of it from as much of an unbiased perspective as we can. Certainly, we will give you our opinions on things just as like people. I think it's also really important to just allow people who this is their life to have the space to share. And we wanted to provide that today. So Jamal, who has reached out to us, he's currently serving a prison sentence, admittedly a pretty significant one. His wife, who lives in Europe, who met him through the prison pen pal system, is going to be joining us on the podcast, which is very, very cool. And not something that I thought we would really ever get to do here. Kayla, I don't know about you, if you thought that like people's lives would be somehow resonating with us talking about, just whatever we wanted to shoot the shit on in this space. Certainly wasn't on my bingo card for 2024.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, I guess, can only look at the bright sides of anything we can right now, since things are kind of bleak. Yeah, this podcast has been really cool. And like you said, getting to meet really incredible people and do really cool things. And we couldn't do any of that without you guys who listen. So thank you so much. And we really look forward to sharing Jamal's story with you and Gabriella's story and learning more about the American justice system together.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us on today's episode. We hope you love it. Cheers.
Cheers. Absolutely. And I am just going to check my messages here. She should be jumping on momentarily. So today we are going to, there she is. Today we are going to be talking to the lovely Gabriella Moore, who just hopped on our Zoom call here. The way that we came to meet Gabriella was through Jamal Moore, who reached out to us. And we are going to be doing a multi-parter on his case and dissecting it with you all and diving into the criminal procedures and laws and all of the things that we like to kind of make a little bit more digestible, typically in our regular show, applied to this case and walking everybody through it in that way. And today we're going to be talking to Gabriella, who is married to Jamal. And Gabriella and Jamal actually both appeared on the Lifetime reality TV series Prison Brides as well. So Gabriella, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi.
Hi.
Gabriella, there's so much I want to ask you about. But first of all, perhaps you could just tell our listeners about how you and Jamal met.
We met through the internet. A lot of people, go on dating apps and other stuff. I messaged Jamal. He was posted as a pen pal. There is a lot of websites like Right to Prisoner and a lot of other ones that I was not aware about at the time. Now I am. So he was posted on a TikTok as a pen pal ad. And I was not aware of that the civilians could actually message the inmates. And Jamal was a bunkie of somebody that I knew. So I was like, oh, hey, he's looking for a pen pal. So basically I just randomly saw his ad and messaged him, send an email to him.
What did you say?
So,
what was your introduction?
Oh God. It was very cringe. No. I just basically I was saying, hey, I'm Gabriella. I saw a pen pal ad through this person. I was curious how you're doing. I described how I look. I think I said the things that I'm interested in. And, what kind of it was just more curious about how is it how is he doing and how, what his story behind it. But yeah, it was very, very cringe because it was a long ass letter. But me and Jamal right now laughing about it because it's funny because the life is so mostly the same because it doesn't matter prison or not prison, but when you message someone and you get to know someone friends wise or romantic wise, whatever the case would be, people like to show their best sides of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So now, years later, when we know each other, on mostly all levels, when it comes mentally, and chemistry and all that type of stuff, and we read it to each other, and it's just so cringe because it's oh yeah, you told me this, but look at you now,
Yeah.
So
that is so cute.
And it's funny because I feel to your point about when you're trying to get to know somebody, you usually try to, I guess, make a good impression, highlight all these things about yourself that you like. When you are messaging somebody and you know that they're incarcerated, there is a huge elephant in the room of now I want to know about the worst parts of you. And I feel that is something that you're having to just acknowledge about somebody probably very quickly and in a much more different sense than just anybody else that you would meet who's maybe not incarcerated. And I think that that's so interesting. And I think that's so when Kayla and I were, getting to know and think about having you on the podcast and wanting to hear your perspective on all of it, it's so beautiful to me in the sense that most people who live in our community who are interacting with or ignoring the criminal legal system don't realize, and it's just not talked about. It's okay, if we could talk to somebody, acknowledge the worst things about them and then move on, that's not common. And that had to be something that you immediately addressed with somebody that you were getting to know via a pen pal relationship. It's so interesting.
That brings a question to mind, which is like, Gabriella, did you know what Jamal had been sentenced for, what crimes he had been sentenced for before starting communicating with him?
No.
How did you find out?
I requested the court documents. At the very beginning, when I didn't really care, to be fair with you, what he did or did not do. I only think I knew that he did not commit any crimes against women or children. And it was not for me. In my mind, I probably thought, probably drugs, because it's like the most common thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we talked and conversated, and we never really spoken about why he's in there, because I didn't really care, because I was not expecting that it's going to come out the way it came out. He didn't spoke about it because the stigma behind it and how the people view when you say, oh, I'm actually wrongfully convicted. Also because his mother is involved into this, and for a lot of people it's mind-blowing, because a lot of families, they could never experience that. So we didn't spoke about it till the point, I think so there was one time that he didn't call me, and I freaked out, because we got into that routine that there's specific times that he will call me and we will we will talk, and we kind of somewhat start to catch feelings for each other, but I didn't admit it to him, and I don't think so he admitted to me at that time yet either. But yeah, he didn't call me. I freaked out. I start on my FBI talents of finding out everything about everybody. So I Googled it. I found the county that he's in. I found the prosecutors. I found the circuit court. I figured out how to get those documents. I emailed them and I was like, send me the documents, the case file and everything. So they sent me that and I started reading it. And then Kayla read the same documents that I read.
I have to.
Did you? Yeah.
Yes, I have. Yep.
I think I would not be lying if I would say, when you read something like this, you're like, okay, this does not make sense. This does not make sense. Why is this happening? Why is it like that? Why they say one thing, but there's actually another thing, and the documents don't match, So that was how I found out. And then he called me, and I think so the facility was on lockdown or something happened in the facility, and they did like a lockdown on the whole prison. And I was like, why didn't tell me? I was like, why didn't say to me what's going on? And he said that it's hard to explain for somebody that the reason why they're in prison is because their mother lied on them. How do you explain that to somebody? And for them to believe it? Because again, the society that we live in. Because now to say somebody, oh, my husband's wrongfully convicted, is not good enough. They would be like, oh, everybody's, one person saying they're wrongfully convicted. Mercedes Williams was also wrongfully convicted. Look at him now. That's how I found out. And then, at the very beginning, before we even went like public with the whole wrongful conviction, I started looking into the things and then start to speak with his mother. His mother did not knew that I know what she did, to see how she is, like how her behavior is, how her patterns are, how she talks about him, things like that. That was already like very negative. So the whole thing was like, yeah, I don't think so he's lying, And then the more I investigated, the more I saw, with more people I spoke that had been around at the time, the witnesses and things like that. I spoke with those people. So that's how it came out, that, the whole situation.
I think it's important to just kind of address a little bit of what we know about Jamal Anthony's case so that our listeners can kind of understand what we're talking about. So Jamal was convicted and sentenced in 2013.
Well, that's when the crime happened. So he was 16 when the crime happened.
And he was convicted for second-degree murder and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. In terms of the documents that I've looked into for Jamal's case, some of the, for our listeners who want to learn about Jamal's case before we do our deep dive, there is a published Court of Appeals opinion that lays out some of the facts about Jamal's case. And it's the state of Michigan Court of Appeals versus Jamal Anthony Moore. It talks about what he was convicted of, what was on appeal, and it just lays out some of the facts that had been presented to the court. So what we know in terms of Jamal is that he was convicted of those 2 felonies and that he was sentenced to 20 to 40 years imprisonment for the second-degree murder conviction and 2 years for the felony firearm conviction. Unfortunately, his case was affirmed on appeal. And there's some issues in his case that certainly the documents that Gabriella has given us, I think, pose. Kayla and I are very interested in his case. But in terms of understanding where he's currently at, he's now serving his prison sentence in Michigan. And Gabriella, you live in Germany currently. Back to how the two of you met. Where were you living when you wrote him originally?
In Germany. I moved to Germany when the COVID started.
Okay.
My sister has a business there. So I moved there and his ad just popped up and I didn't really know too much people or anything. So I just wanted somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
So something like this innocent came out to me fighting for wrongful conviction, which is insane.
Yeah.
Especially being from a country.
And then you started writing him and then you guys kind of started writing each other, I'm assuming letters back and forth.
Yeah. Emails.
Back and forth.
Yeah. Then I got the number, then the calls started. Then we kind of like got into it and we had a whole routine since like a very, very start. He had like 350 women messaging him before I even, because I didn't message him straight away. I think so I waited like a couple of weeks till his ad was posted. And then I messaged him. And since the beginning, we kind of like kicked off. Like it was not even a break that we would not talk. That's how we got along really well.
What do you think was like your common ground? Like in terms of saying that you like hit it off, what do you think about him that you like resonated with?
A lot of things. We really like see the world in very like almost the same way. Like the way our mind works, we have the same values. The things that we want from life is basically the same things, you know. And he started to speak about it first before anybody says anything. Oh, he would say anything before I started to speak about the things that I want from my life. He started to speak about those things, and I was like, "That's crazy," because that's how I see what I want from my life. You know what I mean? Like in a family wise, living wise, well-being wise, health wise, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
When you meet somebody that understands you on the levels, even like on like political views, religion views, you know what I mean? The planet, you know, a lot of things like that that actually matter in the world. You kind of, you know, you understand like I don't know, this is my person. I really don't know how to explain it. It's weird to say because Jamal said it to me as well. This a way after we even got together. He said to me he was praying for me before he even met me. He's an Imam, so he's a very, you know, religious Muslim. He's preaching Islam to the people in facilities. So he said to me, he was like, I was praying for you before I even met you. And it's crazy because for all these women that was messaging him, right? Why me? People love hustling in prison. You know what I mean? Like they're on survival mode, a lot of them. So it's like you could have really did, you know, you could have doing good. You could have like 20 on the roster. And all like fighting for you, you know, or like sending comments or whatever.
Right.
What do you think being married to somebody who's incarcerated has taught you about love and life, I guess? Like, has it changed your values or like how you define love?
Mm-mm. It didn't change it because I think I've always been like this. Like, I've always been very loyal and very, because the culture that I'm from, we're like, we as a family, like we're all coming as a whole, you know what I mean? We all having each other's backs in some way. So that, no, but what it taught me, patience, a lot of patience. I've been very impatient on things for most of my life. I always wanted the things now and like as soon as possible. And I wanted, and yeah, I feel like I didn't thought that you can fit so much information in a 15-minute call conversation because the phone calls are limited to 15 minutes, you know, so I never appreciated that time much as I appreciate right now, even like with the face-to-face visits or like the video visits, you know, the time is so precious.
How often do you guys get to like talk a day?
We can talk as much as we want. He's in minimum security prison right now, so he can call me since the morning till like late at night, back to back if he wants. We pay for the calls, but you know, that's that. When he was in a higher level security prison, he would get like 1 hour in the morning and then 1 hour in the evening of like a yard time. He would call me maybe a couple times in the morning, a couple times in the evening. But now, you know, it's constant every day, all day, really.
How often do you get to go see him? And what does that process look like for you?
Flying, a lot of flying and booking flights,
Yeah.
a lot of money. So I can go see him really as many times as I want. If I would live in Michigan right now, I could go see him every weekend, you know. I usually go like 2 times a year, mostly. And he have like certain amount of visits that he can have. Just right now, I just got back from Michigan and I saw him 4 times. He changed facility, so the time spaces are different right now. I saw him 4 times, 4 hours each. But this one, shortest time that I've been there and the smallest amount of visits that I had because I gifted this trip. So I didn't organize it myself. So, but usually I see him like 14 times per trip. It would be like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I would see him every day and yeah, and spend time. So that's how it looks. Video visits we do every week. You know, usually it's Sundays that we do it. Today I had a podcast, so I did yesterday. But you get used to that and it doesn't look that scary, I guess.
Yeah.
You know?
Pivot a little bit. You and your husband participated in the reality show Prison Brides.
Yes.
That's just one of many like really popular reality shows right now that have to do with relationships with somebody being based in prison. Like, what do you think fascinates people so much about relationships like yours?
Fascinating. Well, the word fascinating is a very like big word. In which way? I think
people are drawn to them. And
why? Yeah, I guess that's what I'm wondering. Like, why do you think people are so fascinated or like interested in watching shows like Prison Brides and watching your relationship with Jamal, you know, play out?
I think that the whole prison stigma about it, you know, people are not educated. The governments do not want them to be educated about this part of the system that everybody is in and living under, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for people, it's, oh my God, you know, she actually married somebody in prison. The prison thing for them it's crazy. They don't see them as the human beings, you know what I mean? They would not see them as somebody normal, really. They would think in their mind that the scariest, the craziest shit that, you know, happened and that girl is crazy or that girl has daddy issues or, you know, some other trauma or probably been abused. Like, that's what the people think about, you know what I mean? But the thing is with a TV show that, like, from my personal perspective is that I got people actually messaging me and saying like, I'm so sorry, like this happened to you. Like, I'm so sorry this happened to him. So even there's this part like of people being crazy and they're watching it because that's like the same way like Love After Lockup. Like everybody's watching that stuff because that's drama and messy and ratchet and, you know what I mean, fighting and stuff.
I love it.
So I think so with this one was just like more the same type of way. They thought this a new bang on the TV. And then when they watched it, they was like, this actually happened to you. Like, I'm so sorry. You know what I mean? So there's a good and bad part of it. I guess me, in my mind, I don't really understand how big it was in America, to the point that I actually went to America and people started stopping me on the road and trying to take pictures with me.
Yeah.
Like, that was so weird to me, because I only had it like through my modeling career and like red carpets and like fashion shows. Like, that's normal, you know, because like you're modeling for somebody, you know what I mean? But me stopping at Walmart looking like a crackhead with no makeup, like with a bun, and like me and Emma walking, you know, and we were like, it was just like weird. It's like, what, me? Like, I'm not famous. But I guess for the people, because it was on the TV, it's such a big thing in America to land on TV, that in their mind, like, the most richest, famous, most successful person that literally hit the jackpot in life type of thing, you know? Which was definitely not the case, even like after it. But yeah, that was fun. There was a lot of behind the scenes that did not land on TV, unfortunately. Yeah, but it was an experience. I didn't get paid for the show either, so I just did plain on getting Jamal's story out there. So it was more like exposing what happened to him in hopes to get some help. That was not too much successful, but it's okay, you know, because it's still on the TV on repeat. So
Yeah.
you know, we're going there.
And speaking of that, I had a question kind of follow up, because you and Jamal found us. And similarly to, you know, you having all of these other avenues where you've talked about different aspects of your life. Now you're on this podcast and we're so happy you're here. And, you know, you're sharing
Jamal's,
another part.
by the way,
Yeah, that's what I was
me.
going to say. Jamal, you guys have been communicating with us. He found us. And it's so amazing as a defense attorney to have somebody who isn't a client of mine, who resonates with something we've said, who found us while he's incarcerated, and now his wife is on our podcast. Like, to me, that is so amazing and just not something I ever thought would happen on here. And I'm sure the two of you have talked about you coming on the podcast, and you've talked about the communications that you've had with us.
Yeah.
How did he find us? Do you know?
I think so, because last year when there was a crime and con in Nashville, I think so, Kayla, you were there, or I'm not sure. I was supposed to be there with Emma, but then things happened and we couldn't be there because we was one of the people that was supposed to be presented, like, and stuff. And I think so, like, through the followers, like, he was like going through things like with his like cousin, and she was going through it, and there was like looking for the podcast to go on to. And then basically that's what happened. They found you guys, and then Jamal messaged you guys and stuff.
Small world. That's awesome.
Well, it's just so cool in terms of the parts about you, not about Jamal, but about you and the experiences that you are having because of this. Is there something that you're wanting people to know as well, that you don't feel like maybe the show conveyed about your life, or maybe you don't feel like people understand about your life? Because you've had such an interesting relationship. And I'm sure that it has put your life under a microscope that reality TV would, I think, do. And I think it would be really scary to have people know that much about your relationship and about your life and judge you and say awful things about you. Is there something that you want people to know about your character, or how much you just wish things had been conveyed differently about you personally?
I think that, to be fair with you, the thing is with me, right? And even when I started the TV show with Jamal, before we even signed off, and it was like, we want you there, we're going to put you this, and the whole conversation, I said to Jamal, I was like, if we're doing this, I'm not going to lie anything. I'm not going to hide anything. We're going to tell everything what's going on. We're not going to pretend that we're not we are. A lot of people create this image on the TV, right? And then they have to keep up with that image because that's something that they created in the people's fantasies and heads, and they have that ideology. I always said I'm not going to do that because I don't have energy to keep up with that on top of everything that we have going on, you know? So for me, it was never like, oh, I've been misunderstood, or, you know what I mean? Nothing to be worth of explaining, I would say. You know what I mean? The way I
Yeah.
see for myself, like somebody, like a legal blonde from that movie. That's how it seems like on TV. You know, this dumb blonde girl that's trying to get this man out of prison. That's maybe not that dumb. That's how I've seen it, but I'm not like that though. Like, I'm very educated, but I know that TV has to, portray something. And especially like a lot of people, I don't know if you guys see my TikTok and stuff like that, like a lot of people actually like, there's two parts of it. Either they're judging it or they like actually looking into it and be like, oh wow. I had a lot of people telling me to actually become an attorney, which was hilarious. It was like, you should become an attorney. You're really good at this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Even
you are a
like
great advocate.
Even the attorney told me to become an attorney. And I was like, I probably have to be a citizen for that. So it might take a while. I think so I can do like paralegal or something. I wish that people would not have that, as I said, that stigma around of judgment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then again, bliss. You can't tell for, stupid person is stupid. Expect them to understand that they're stupid. Trying.
Amen,
I think that,
sister.
and I think that's the most insulting insult. Like, I would rather be called pretty much anything than be called dumb.
Seriously.
Because if you don't like me if you don't like me for anything else, like, I really don't care. But being called stupid is just so insulting, especially when you're in your position advocating for somebody that you care about, and then people writing you off as dumb and people making all of these conclusions based on how you look or anything like that. That is just so offensive and rooted in misogyny and terrible. And I'm really sorry that not only, I mean, I echo I'm sorry that, your husband is incarcerated and that is the reality of your life. Like, that is hard. But I'm also really sorry that you're getting like insults thrown your way on you being dumb, because that's so offensive and unnecessary. Like, people can just, that's so petty and gross. And I hate that. I'm so sorry.
I always said if the women would run the world, there would be no wars in the world. You know what I mean? Seriously. A lot of people, sorry, Clark, no offense.
he's used to it.
We'll see you here. Again, and I said this on my lives as well. It's easy to judge someone and say they're stupid or they don't know enough or they don't understand whatever negative, then put their brain in and make them function and think about it and understand the government is not our friend.
Yeah.
We are just a farm of people that they keep running us in a circle to get money one way or another. Justice system is gone. It's been gone since the Second World War, especially in America.
Did you know how flawed the American justice system was before your relationship with Jamal and before you uncovered all of the issues with his case? Like, did you already have a sense of that, or did you learn like a whole lot more through the relationship?
A lot of people in Europe are very aware of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not trying to offensive it, but a lot of people in Europe are very strongly aware of it, of the situation, and it's not good. It's quite sad thinking about, again, not trying to be harsh on it, saying America is the greatest country in the world, but the first in the world of wrongfully convicted people and the first in the world of the highest numbers of people imprisoned. You know what I mean? And death sentences on vile ways, like, you know what I mean? And the years, like, even the sentences, how can somebody, like, even have, like, let's just say 5 years, 5 life sentences, but in reality, one life?
Yeah.
Then the other thing that I was actually thinking about it before, right? So the whole American justice system, right, is based on Bible, right? In a God we trust. They basically more or less like saying by the Bible, right? But how can a judge who is bleeding the same way like everybody else, can sentence someone to death But in the Bible, it says God gave you life and only God can take it.
It's so interesting that you're bringing up all of these things that I think as an American defense attorney, that are things that, especially now, I practice in Idaho. Idaho has a lot going on with the death penalty, and there's a lot that I'm having to stomach and grapple with, and all of these things that you just pointed out. I mean, Idaho got the firing squad back to try to kill people, and we had a botched execution earlier this year. I think with America's longest serving death row inmate, and so these are things that, as an American woman who works in the criminal legal system, which I'm going to say on this podcast, I try to always call it the criminal legal system. Justice system has never really resonated with me in terms of the environment that I work in. I think justice is something that I try to pursue. And I think it's this illusory concept that I think people who want to be an attorney seek. But I don't feel like it resonates with the actual environment that I work in. So I always call it the criminal legal system. I do civil stuff now too, but it's really hard to hear a woman that is from the other side of the world talking about things and having more of those, kind of grappling things that you just talked about. Like, how can a judge do this? How can a judge do this? These are conflicting things where I want more people in my own society to struggle with that, because I think
to grapple with those questions.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The struggle is what I think needs to happen in America. The struggle of, okay, this is not perfect. This is not right. Like, what are we doing here? And unfortunately, Kayla, we talk about it all the time on this podcast. Change in our neck of the woods in the law is so weird, because certain things change very quickly and certain things change very slowly. And that is a difficult tension as an attorney. I think it would be very hard to be the spouse of somebody who is receiving some of the most punitive, and I don't know the right words for it, but to be the spouse of somebody who's incarcerated in America, to be the spouse of that person and not really have grown up understanding how the carceral state in the US works as well. Like, that would be really, really hard, because we are the highest incarcerated state, and America is extremely, extremely punitive with sentencing. We were talking about how you and Jamal bonded over a life that you want and these goals that you each have. With your perspective on, the system that he's in, with the realities as of now for how long his sentence is going to be, how do you have some of the more, air quote, normal aspects of a relationship where you talk about the future? Like, what does that look like to the two of you?
We really just want a normal life. I don't know if that's going to be in America, because Jamal somewhat would like to, but I always ask him, why would you want to stay in a country that literally sentenced you to basically life? I know that's numbers, but your good years of life are gone. If we would not overturn this case, right? You coming out being like, 45? What can you do? Go to work in KFC and that's the life of it? And most of them, they're coming out and they're so traumatized from the system, because there's so much shit going on in there, and so much corruption and so much degrading. They all cover up with these like programs and rehabilitation stuff. That's not how it is there. That's the whole just like money laundering for them, really. And I always question him about it, like why he would want to stay in a country that literally took his life away. But I guess for him that's the only thing that he knows, With me personally, I said to him, I'm going to give a chance to stay in, because I did not want to live there just because of how it's going now in there. Um, Also because I will have Black children,
Mhm.
and I don't want to keep my children in the country that basically kills and incarcerates Black kids.
Yeah.
And the whole world knows about it, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
And I appreciate you saying that. I think something that we should have just addressed as well is Jamal is a Black man. He is the, when we think about, all of the stereotypes around incarceration in America, he checks most of those boxes. He was somebody who was sentenced at a very young age. He's a Black man in America who's serving a very long prison sentence. If
Was living in Detroit, Michigan, in
yeah,
what was it, the 10th precinct? So it's like a rough area. My last question was, Gabriella, do you believe that love is about fate or choice? Like specifically with your relationship with Jamal?
I think somewhat both. And I also think that it's really difficult for a lot of people to love somebody unconditionally. And a lot of people do not understand what is unconditional love. Because the love starts when it's the hardest time to be with the person that you are with. I mean, the love is not the honeymoon and all, cupcakes and flies and roses around and you're in love and this is amazing feeling that you dreamt of for the whole life. I think the love starts when the difficult is. And me and Jamal always say and talk about it, and when we got married, and like the chaplain said, like for the better and the worst. And we were sitting in the visiting room, like we got married, like with literally close to vending machines. And we were sitting in the visiting room, and we got married and it was like, Gabby, now we have the worst part. The good part is going to come later. Because he knows that's not the wedding that I wanted. That my mother could not be there, my father could not be there. Like the culture that I'm from, this type of stuff is like really, really serious. You know what I mean? That's in somewhat like I'm taking that away from the people that I love the most. You know what I mean? So I think that's love in somewhat when it comes to like choosing the person, under these type of circumstances. There's actually like the unconditional love that you choose that person regardless of no matter what. You know what I mean? I think fate comes in the wrongful conviction part, I guess. But also the sacrifice. That it's part of it really. Because nowadays in this generation, people don't want to work on relationships. They don't want to work on marriages. They don't want to do that. That's why there are so many divorces right now. Because the time that it's going to start to be difficult, people just leave. So I think, as I said, the hardest things, we treat this the same way as any other life situation. This is the situation, we have to deal with it right now, and we're going to deal with it, we're going to figure it out, and we're going to move on. You know what I mean? And yeah, and I have hope in it, and we literally looking into it, and I think at this point we all know that what happened to him was unjust and unfair, and we're going to work on it to get him home. So I just keep my hope, and I'm sure there's going to be the way that we're going to be able to figure out.
As somebody who is the loved one of somebody who's incarcerated, and I'm sure you've had moments throughout this process where you've thought about Jamal's legal team and just things that you wish they would think about in terms of his life, and his loved ones and how it impacts you. As somebody who works in that space where, I represent somebody, but it has all sorts of effects on their family. And to some extent, I think we get to have the dissonance of, well, they're not my client. But in terms of, now the long haul process of other stuff that you want to work on in Jamal's case, what is something that you wish defense attorneys would consider when representing somebody kind of through the process that you've kind of had to be involved in?
And when I even started to look for the attorneys, right, and I called to probably 150 law firms in Michigan to try to find somebody for Jamal to for getting like a counsel for Jamal. I always said that I need a person that would genuinely care about what's going on to him, that they would not see another $30,000 check. You know what I mean? I need somebody that genuinely would care, just because his case is not really factual. His case, there's more surrounded around his case than with the case itself. You know what I mean? His background, the way he grew up, the trauma, the abuse that he'd been through, the reasonings behind it. You know what I mean? It's more around it than actually with the case. So I needed the person that actually would understand the reasonings. You know, why the situation even it is the way it is. Because I think it's really important to know and understand what the Black kid from disruptive family in the roughest area from Detroit going through every single day, living basically in the streets, from the house to the house to the house to CPS, you know what I mean, without no food, no shoes, no support, none of that. You know what I mean? So I think these things, the person has to be compassionate about these things to actually fight for somebody like Jamal. You cannot look at Jamal's case and be like, oh yeah, I can do this and I can do this, because there is a lot. You know what I mean? You have to understand the racism in America. You have to understand the corruption in America. You have to understand, the prosecutors, how much they love to pin the shit on people without even investigating things properly, because they're trying to save money or get some brownie points on their name. So yeah, that's what I would like to say about that, really. And I think it's really important, because I'm pretty sure most of the attorneys, they do this job to help people, regardless which side you choose to. But I think somewhat a lot of people in the future, they lose their way, and they just start to be like a robots with no emotion, to understand that this is somebody's, this is a human being.
That's a really good reminder.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. It is really easy to get really jaded about life, I think, as an attorney. And I think as a defense attorney, I see a lot of horrible shit. And it's really easy to just, for the sake of trying to take care of myself, not hold the weight of some people's life in the way that it should be, because otherwise there would be just a lot of vicarious trauma all the time. So having those boundaries is really important, but also like the severity and the humanity that I think you have to have, like the seriousness of seeing someone and sitting with them, and the honor you need to give their life, I think is really important. And I think to be a good defense attorney, you have to have that. And I think it is the most important thing. I think you can work on every other skill as an attorney. You can learn the law. You can continue growing in that way. But just the compassion and empathy and care you have to be an advocate for somebody, that has to be number one. At least from my perspective, Kayla. I don't know if you agree, but I think for us, that's why we like doing what we do. And I really hope that for whatever Jamal's going forward, whatever that looks like for him, that he feels that from the people who are involved in his case, because I think it is incredibly, incredibly important.
On that note, Gabriella, where can people find you? And then also, do you want to talk about Jamal's book a little bit and where people can find that?
Yeah. I don't know. You read it? You had a chance to read it? Or?
I'm working my way through it currently.
I'm working my way through it too. I mean, I think it's really interesting. I think I'm about halfway through it right now. And so TBD, I found my copy on Amazon, I believe.
Yeah.
And yeah. And Gabriella, I know you have TikTok. You're on TikTok. People can find you there, right? Anywhere else where you want any anybody to follow you or get more information about the case?
Yeah, drop your plug, girl.
No, honestly, just TikTok and Instagram. Funny because I never really been a big social media person. Till Jamal and I needed to speak about the whole thing. Just to find people to actually listen to what happened to him, and expose the whole situation. But I've really been like a simple person. Like, I actually do not really like people in the nicest way possible.
Hey, same, fair.
Very fair.
Oh, I was just going to say, Jamal's book is called If Pain Was a Person.
Yes. That actually really well describes the book itself. I also think when it comes to his book, as I was the one that put it together. So excuse me, that was pretty raw.
Wow.
Whole book. My sister's friend made the cover. I put it together. I did the whole thing. So when I was like reading the first,
if we wanted, I was reading it. So beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
I was reading the first hand, and I felt like I kind of got to know Jamal's different type of sides when I was reading it, because he never really spoke about certain stories that happened to him. And I think it's crazy, but it's painful at the same time to read what, at the time, as a child, he went through, and the memories that he remembers, and the way he describes them in such a detail since he was like a kid, and the all experiences that he had, it makes you to understand everything and how he ended up in prison because of his background, the things that he'd been through, the relationship with his mother.
It's a very unique perspective. And I love that it's a memoir. And those are my favorite types of books. And I feel like everybody has something to teach us, right? And it's like, I feel like you really get to know Jamal as you're reading through his memories, like you were talking about. And if anybody is maybe not as much of a reader, they can also find you on Prison Brides. Was it season 1?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I watched that on Amazon as well.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gabriella.
Thank you for having me.